Hello and thank you for taking the time to watch latest news. Here, we always bring you the most up-to-date and accurate information from the past 24 hours. Now, here are the detailed updates. On the morning of the 22nd of June, in a post on social media, Hiram Anaasas, a member of the Political Bureau of the U.S. House of Representatives, announced that they would hold U.S. President Donald Trump responsible for the airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. He wrote that President Donald Trump must be held accountable. Earlier, a statement from the armed forces of the Houthis, a militia group backed by Iran, declared that they were preparing to attack U.S. Navy warships in the Red Sea in the event the U.S. launched an attack on Iran in support of Israel. The Houthis began attacking ships in the Red Sea in November 2023, targeting vessels linked to Israel in solidarity with Hamas forces in the Gaza Strip. Later, U.S. warships in the area also became targets as Washington intervened to protect maritime security in the Red Sea. In response, the U.S. launched a series of airstrikes on Houthi targets, continuing until spring this year before a ceasefire was reached. Hamas also condemned the U.S. airstrikes on Iran, calling them a violation of international law. Hamas declared this to be a dangerous escalation, a blatant breach of international law, and a direct threat to global peace and security. The group also emphasized it would hold the U.S. and Israel accountable. On the 21st of June, President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. had completed strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The bombing of these sites marked the official entry of the United States into the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. Last week, Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, warned that any U.S. military intervention in Iran would result in serious and irreversible consequences. These Western threats are not baseless, as Iran has retaliated against Washington in the past. Most notably, in January 2020, then President Trump ordered a drone strike that assassinated Major General Qasem Soleimani, the commander of Iran's elite special forces. That airstrike triggered a swift response from Iran. Days later, Iran launched 13 ballistic missiles at the Al-Assad airbase and another US base in Erbil, both located in Iraq. Although no American troops were killed in what became the largest ballistic missile attack against US forces abroad, over 100 soldiers were later diagnosed and treated for traumatic brain injuries. A similar retaliatory strike from Iran may now be imminent. According to The Hill, tens of thousands of American troops are currently within range if Iran decides to strike back following President Trump's bombing order. US troops are stationed at bases across Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, UAE. Those located in Iraq and Kuwait, the countries closest to Iran, may have only minutes to prepare for an Iranian strike. Colonel Hill Zomrick, Vice President of the Global Guardian Security Consultancy, said that if Iran had already issued a launch command, attacks could occur in under 15 minutes. They move very quickly, he noted. To prepare for Iranian retaliation, US military officials may have started moving valuable assets from bases deemed most vulnerable. Zomrick pointed out that several aircraft have already left the Al-Assad airbase, as evidenced by satellite imagery publicly available this week. He predicted that Al-Assad, which hosts the majority of the approximately 2,500 US personnel in Iraq, is the most likely target due to its proximity to Iran and history of previous attacks. Iran generally avoids escalating tensions with the UAE, where about 3,500 US troops are stationed, or Qatar, home to Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American military base in the Middle East with around 10,000 personnel. In addition, 13,500 US troops are deployed across 5 other bases, along with 9,000 military and civilian personnel stationed at the US Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Manama, Bahrain. Hundreds more are stationed at bases in Jordan, Syria, and Oman. In an interview with The Hill, former US Central Command CENTCOM commander, retired General John Botel, said that American bases in the Middle East are built with defensive measures to minimize risk. However, he warned that the US also maintains many diplomatic and private sector facilities in the region that could be vulnerable. Iran has numerous ways to maneuver within the region. American bases and deployments are also at risk of attacks by Iran-backed militias. In January last year, 3 US soldiers were killed in a drone strike on a small US outpost in Afghanistan. Recently, US officials reaffirmed their readiness to respond to any Iranian attacks, having already increased military firepower in the region, including deploying the USS Nimitz carrier strike group. The Pentagon also sent refueling aircraft to Europe and warships to the Azov Sea to help intercept missiles aimed at Israel. According to Jura Intel, an open-source intelligence group monitoring the Middle East and the US, Air Force recently moved dozens of F-16 fighter jets from a base in Italy to Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. The Middle East, a region long plagued by conflict, is now facing a new and highly dangerous flashpoint as direct warfare erupts between Iran and Israel. Israel's large-scale airstrikes on Iranian military and nuclear facilities since the 13th of June have sparked a chain of fierce retaliations, plunging the region into an unprecedented spiral of violence. In just a few days, millions of civilians have been displaced, left without food or medical care. The conflict not only threatens regional security, but has also created a humanitarian disaster with devastating consequences for innocent people. In Iran, Israeli airstrikes have not only targeted military installations, but also caused significant damage to civilian infrastructure. Residential areas in Tehran, Isfahan, and Natanz have been severely affected, with many buildings destroyed and utilities like water and electricity disrupted. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, around 150,000 people have been forced to flee their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring provinces or in temporary government-run camps. Many families left Tehran after Israel's preemptive strikes as the capital lacks bomb shelters. Gas stations were overrun with residents attempting to flee, while hospitals were overwhelmed with hundreds of injured victims. Mina, a financial worker in Tehran, recounted her escape. "We were stuck in traffic on the highway, unsure if we'd be caught in an airstrike or if there were secret facilities nearby. That uncertainty made us incredibly fearful." The World Health Organization, WHO, warned that Iran's healthcare system, already strained by sanctions, risks collapse if the conflict drags on. Living conditions in temporary camps for displaced people are dire, with acute shortages of food, clean water, and medicine. A recent report from the International Federation of the Red Cross, IFRC, stated that adolescents and the elderly are the most vulnerable, facing high risks of malnutrition and disease. In Israel, retaliatory attacks from Iran have also inflicted heavy damage, especially in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Rescue teams have been working around the clock to pull victims from the rubble. Israeli citizens, long accustomed to skirmishes with Hamas and Hezbollah, now face a new threat from Iranian ballistic missiles and UAVs. The Israeli government has ordered residents near military installations to evacuate and has raised the national alert level. According to The Guardian, thousands of families in Tel Aviv have stockpiled essential goods, water, and medicine in preparation for a prolonged war. Israel's air defense system, previously effective against Gaza-launched rockets, is now struggling to intercept the high volume of ballistic missiles from Iran. Many Israelis voiced concerns on social media platform X, witnessing more Iranian missiles bypassing defenses and hitting residential zones. The Iran-Israel conflict could further exacerbate the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, where civilians are already bearing the brunt of the devastation. Nearly 90% of Gaza's population has been displaced, living in conditions severely lacking basic necessities. The UN estimates it could take 15 years and nearly $650 million to rebuild Gaza. In Lebanon, the 2024 clashes between Israel and Hezbollah have pushed millions into refugee camps. These tragedies have prompted international warnings about the dire consequences if the Iran-Israel war escalates into a full-scale regional conflict. On the 14th of June, during an emergency UN meeting on the war, UN Deputy Secretary General Rosemary D. warned of the potential for widespread regional ignition. Secretary General Antonio Guterres also urged both sides to de-escalate and prioritize diplomacy. European nations, including Germany, France, and the UK, have offered to host negotiations on Iran's nuclear program, a key driver of the conflict. Regionally, Egypt and Turkey have called for a ceasefire and suggested that Oman serve as a mediator. However, international humanitarian organizations like WHO the Red Cross, and UNHCR are facing difficulty accessing affected areas. Humanitarian corridors in Iran and Israel have yet to be established, making it impossible to deliver aid, medicine, and shelter to civilians in need. A report from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, noted that humanitarian needs in Iran have tripled since the 13th of June, but current funding meets less than 20% of the required amount. Experts warn that although the Iran-Israel conflict has only recently begun, it has already caused severe harm to civilians in both nations. If the war continues, the Middle East could face an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe, with innocent civilians paying the highest price.